then we're going to open it up. So I'm about to pivot a little bit and get a little more challenging. I asked you guys, what would you do if you lost your VP and treasurer? What I would like to hear is, all of you said buckle down and do the work. What is the work? Box.
Well, for one, I mean, the obvious work would be getting the budget through. If you don't have a treasurer, he's the one that oversees that. You're going to have to, I mean, you would hope that his book is up to date up until that point. If it's not, you're going to have to do some backtracking. There's, you know, depending on which vice president there was that was out, whether it was academics or student affairs, you're going to have to go to the people like Deb Barry and the people that those vice presidents work with on a daily basis. And you're going to see, what was this person doing? What was the last thing that they did? Where do I need to pick up from? And I feel like the vice presidents, in my experience with my limited experience, and I'm sure you'll get me on that in a little bit, Sean, in dealing with the SBA, the vice presidents have a very important job. We basically split the SBA into essentially two tracks, and they're very important. And I feel it. Like, I don't use the word independent because ultimately the accountability falls on the president, and anything the vice president does has to go through the president. But the vice presidents are I feel fairly independent in a lot of that they hold meetings with certain individuals in the administration, and I feel like the very first thing that you'd have to do is you'd have to go to that administrator and say, what was the last thing this person did? Where do I need to pick up from? And you probably have to do a lot of learning on the go. That's a pretty bad situation that Sean described.
Mr. DiNucci, what is the work?
Well, I mean, what you would have to do would depend on where in the process you lost your treasurer. If you lost them over the summer to transfer, you would have to pick up where we've seen it picked up, which is with the budget proposals from every org. There's 28 or 29 organizations on this campus, all of which submit a 5 to 10 page budget request. And I can tell you from personal experience, often what is handed in is, shall we say, subpar. It's difficult to, you know, there's a lot of work involved. It's not like you get a budget. There's sort of there's a give and take involved. So it's not like the budget is submitted, you review it, you stamp it, you're done. There's a lot of back and forth between the board and the orgs. There's a lot of clarification on events, you know, the purpose of an event, who's going to be served by the event. You know, I mean, again, I hate to say what we said already, but you just got to buckle down and get into the meat. I mean, you really have to be intimately involved in the inner workings of virtually every organization.
Mr. Ludman.
The first thing I'm going to do if I'm elected is hold a meeting with my executive board and talk to them first about whether there's going to be any issues about whether they're going to be here, are they applying to transfer, or anything else like that. Are there potential issues with GPA or transfer? Luckily, we have all, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but we have no 1Ls on the current executive board, so transfers probably, I'm sorry, on the incoming executive board. So transfers probably are not going to be too much of an issue. In terms of what the work is, I think the budgets were due this past summer on June 6th. I know it was the first week of June that they were due. Like Matt said, a lot of times they are subpar, and I think if you're in a situation where you're in a bit of a crisis mode, you need to go back to organizations. You need to send them back and say, we need more detail, especially now. We need to know what you're going to be doing. We're not just going to rubber stamp anything, especially given the situation that there's a treasurer and a VP of academics missing. If that were to occur, I think it's important that not only the SBA president, but the remainder of the SBA board meet with the Office of Student Affairs and get their input and find out what they think should be done. You need to meet with Dean Williams and see what her opinion is. How do you deal with the situation? Has it happened in the past? I've worked with Dean Williams before. I know her. I have a good relationship with her. I'd be able to speak to her and find out and get her advice. You need to get advice from everybody, and you need to deal with the situation. And like Matt and everybody else has said, you need to buckle down. Not only do you have to deal with the budget issue, though, you also have to deal with orientation. The SBA Executive Board is responsible for planning orientation for the incoming students. This is important. This is their first impression of this school. You need to multitask. You need to deal with more than just budgetary issues. And again, I think you turn to people and you ask for help and you ask for advice. You turn to the Office of Student Affairs, Deb Berry, who is probably the most important person on this campus, more so than Dean Adams, in terms of getting things done. Thank you.
Mr. Bryan.
Thank you. First thing I do is probably call Sean. I know he's not going to want to hear from me, but I would talk to him and try to work out how things have been done in the past. Adam is correct. Orientation is a huge problem that would have to be dealt with, I would say, first, because the incoming students, as he said, a first impression is the most important thing. The budgets can be dealt with, and if the budgets come out late, that's just something the organizations will have to deal with. The orientation is widening. The budgets are secondary, I think. And also, I believe that there is I can't remember, over the summer, you went to an SBA national conference. You have to deal with issues dealing with that as well. Do you miss that? Can you skip that? What is your whole process of doing with that? Yeah, I imagine you can't skip that. You have to deal with that. You have to have a schedule made up with your board about when to meet and constantly meet, because it's going to take more efforts from everywhere. We keep saying, step up your efforts, but it's going to require constant planning, talking with Deb more than she's probably going to want to hear from me. The issues with the budget, it's not going to be, you can't send them back to them for more clarification. You look at the budgets that people have had, it's a very straightforward process. If you do not complete the work, I would then just not give them the funding. That's what it comes down to. In a shortage, you have to do what you can, and if you do not actually fulfill your obligation in the budgets, then there's really nothing I can do. That is how I would handle it.
The ABA conference is in New York this year.